The morning sun shone brightly on the busy city streets as cars moved quickly and people hurried to work. Among them was a woman who walked slowly, her steps calm but filled with thought. She was dressed simply, wearing jeans and a soft blouse, nothing fancy, nothing that would make her stand out in a crowd. Her hair was tied neatly back, and her eyes scanned the world with a quiet confidence that only a few could notice. Her name was Angela. Angela was not just any woman walking into town that day. She was a successful CEO, someone who had built her reputation with years of hard work, intelligence, and patience. But she didn't look like the typical picture of wealth or power. She liked to keep her style simple because she believed true strength never needed to be shouted. On that morning, she decided to visit a car dealership that she had been watching for some time. It wasn't just a random visit. This dealership was about to become hers, though no one inside yet knew. She wanted to see how the people there treated customers, especially those who didn't look rich or important. It was her way of understanding the kind of service her future employees gave. She parked her car a block away and walked in so that no one would notice the kind of vehicle she owned. As she stepped through the glass doors, the cool air of the showroom greeted her. Inside, the space was polished and bright. Rows of shiny cars reflected the lights above, each one spotless and carefully arranged to look attractive to buyers. Salespeople stood here and there, smiling at some customers, offering brochures, and explaining features. Some customers wore suits, others came with families, and the staff seemed eager to help them. But when Angela entered, no one rushed to greet her. Instead, a man standing near the main desk looked up and gave her a quick glance. He was the dealership manager, a tall man with slicked back hair, a sharp suit, and a confident walk. His name was Richard. He noticed Angela but did not smile. His eyes narrowed as if he was already judging her. Angela, however, did not notice or care. She walked slowly toward a silver car near the center of the showroom, admiring its shape and design. She leaned slightly to look at the price tag and smiled to herself. She had a deep appreciation for cars, not just for their value but for the engineering behind them. Richard finally walked over. His steps were brisk, his face tight. He cleared his throat loudly and asked, "Can I help you?" But his tone did not sound helpful. It was sharp, rushed, and almost annoyed. Angela turned to him politely and nodded. "Yes, I was just looking at this model. Could you tell me more about its features?" Instead of showing excitement at a potential customer's interest, Richard folded his arms and gave a short laugh. "This one? It's one of our higher-end models. Very expensive. Are you sure you want to know about this?" Angela smiled softly. "Yes. I'd like to know about it." Richard sighed, as if she had asked for too much. He walked around the car half-heartedly, pointing to a few parts. His explanations were short, lacking the energy he showed other customers across the room. Angela noticed how differently he treated her compared to how warmly he greeted others, but she stayed calm. She asked another question, this time about the safety features. Instead of answering with care, Richard looked her up and down, then said, "Look, maybe you should check out our used section outside. These cars inside, they're not for everyone." Angela's heart sank a little, not because of his words, but because she already understood the kind of man he was. Still, she kept her calm expression. "I am interested in these models," she repeated gently. Richard frowned, impatient now. His voice grew louder. "Ma'am, I don't want to waste your time or mine. These cars are for serious buyers. If you're just looking around, maybe today isn't the day for you." Angela remained silent for a moment, simply studying him. Other customers glanced over, noticing his tone. Some looked uncomfortable but quickly turned away, not wanting to get involved. Richard, however, didn't care. He continued, "If you can't afford it, that's okay. But please don't take up space here when I have real customers to attend to." Angela's eyes softened, but she did not argue. She took a slow breath, nodded, and said quietly, "Thank you for your time." Then she turned to leave. Richard watched her walk out, shaking his head slightly as if he had just dealt with a nuisance. He adjusted his tie and quickly moved toward another group of customers, his smile suddenly wide and professional again, showing a different face than the one he had just used with Angela. Outside, Angela stood for a moment, feeling the warm sun on her face again. She thought deeply about what had just happened. It wasn't the first time she had faced such treatment, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. But what Richard didn't know was that his behavior had just sealed his own fate. She wasn't just another visitor. She was about to become his boss, and this dealership was about to have a new owner. Angela's driver pulled up quietly in a black car a few minutes later. She got in without a word, her mind filled with the scene she had just experienced. She knew she had a decision to make, not only about the future of this dealership but about the kind of leadership she wanted to show. Respect, she thought to herself, is the true measure of character. And soon, everyone inside that showroom would learn what that meant. The next day, the dealership showroom opened early as usual. The glass doors slid wide, the bright lights came on, and the polished cars stood proudly in their spots, waiting to attract buyers. The staff came in one by one, dressed neatly, carrying coffee cups, ready for another day of sales. Some were cheerful, some were already tired, but all knew the dealership was busy and competitive. Every customer who walked in could mean a big sale or a wasted hour. Richard, the manager, arrived a little later than the others. He walked in with his usual air of authority, nodding to a few staff members but not stopping to greet them properly. He believed his role gave him the right to act above the others. His main focus was on numbers: how many cars were sold, how much money was made, and how fast deals could be closed. He remembered the woman from the day before, the one he asked to leave. He laughed to himself, thinking she had wasted his time. In his mind, she was no different from others who came only to admire the cars but never had the money to buy. He never once thought he could have been wrong. By mid-morning, the showroom was busy again. Customers walked around, some asking questions, others running their hands over the polished hoods of the cars. Families discussed which model would suit them best, while business professionals negotiated lease deals. The staff was busy, smiling, handing out brochures, and answering with practiced charm. Angela returned quietly. She walked in alone, her steps calm and her expression thoughtful. She wore the same simple style as before, which again gave the impression of someone ordinary. She didn't draw attention right away. But this time, she carried a small folder under her arm. Inside were the documents proving her ownership, papers signed just days before that gave her full control over the dealership chain. The first to notice her was one of the junior sales staff. He walked up politely and asked, "Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you with something today?" His smile was warm, and Angela appreciated it. But before she could answer, Richard appeared again, stepping in front of his employee. "It's fine," Richard said sharply. "I know her. She was here yesterday." He turned to Angela, his expression already filled with impatience. "Ma'am, I thought we talked about this. We don't need people wasting time here. If you're not serious, please leave." The young salesman looked surprised, unsure why his manager was speaking so harshly. Angela simply looked at Richard, her calm eyes watching him without anger. She gave a small nod and said softly, "I'll leave soon. But before that, I'll need everyone here to gather for a few minutes. I have something important to share." Richard blinked in confusion, then gave a short laugh. "Something to share? This is not a community hall. This is a business. If you don't have money for a car, there's nothing for you here." Angela opened her folder slightly, but she didn't reveal the documents yet. She wanted the moment to unfold naturally. She turned to the young salesman who had first approached her. "Could you please ask the staff to gather here for a moment?" she requested kindly. The young man hesitated, but something in her voice felt sincere. He nodded slowly and began calling his colleagues over. The other staff, curious, left their spots and came closer. Customers also paused their browsing, watching the scene unfold. A quiet buzz filled the showroom. Richard, however, grew annoyed. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're disturbing my sales floor." He raised his voice. "Everyone, go back to work. This lady has no business here." But Angela stood still, her calmness more powerful than his anger. She gently placed the folder on the hood of the silver car she had admired the day before. She placed her hand on it and said clearly, "I am not here as a visitor today. I am here as the new owner of this dealership." A wave of shock spread through the room. The staff froze, eyes wide, whispering to each other. The customers stared in disbelief. Richard's jaw dropped, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. Angela opened the folder and pulled out the official papers, signed contracts, ownership certificates, and legal documents. She held them up so everyone could see. "These are the documents proving my ownership. This dealership, along with others in the chain, now belongs to me." The room went silent except for the hum of the lights above. Richard's face turned pale, his confidence draining away. He stammered, What are you talking about? This can't be true." Angela looked at him directly. "It is true. I came here yesterday not to shop, but to see how customers were treated. And what I saw was disrespect. Instead of offering help, you judged me by appearance. You spoke down to me. You dismissed me as if I didn't matter. That behavior has no place in a business that is supposed to serve people with respect and fairness." The staff members exchanged looks. Some looked guilty, realizing they had also ignored her when she first entered. Others felt relief, glad they had not acted the same way. The young salesman who had greeted her kindly lowered his head in gratitude, realizing his small act of respect had been noticed. Richard tried to recover his authority. You could have told me yesterday. You didn't say who you were." Angela's voice was calm but firm. "Respect should not depend on titles or wealth. Every customer deserves the same courtesy, whether they come in wearing a suit or simple clothes. That is the foundation of good service." A murmur of agreement came from some customers watching the scene. One even clapped softly, then another joined, until a few people were applauding her words. Richard's face burned red with embarrassment. His voice shook now. I didn't mean it that way. I thought you were just..." He stopped, realizing there was no excuse that would make him look better. His arrogance had already been exposed. Angela carefully placed the documents back into the folder and straightened up. "From today, things will change here. I will meet with the team soon to set new standards. But one thing will be clear: respect and fairness are not optional. They are required." The staff nodded quickly, many of them clapping along with the customers now. The energy in the room shifted. Where there had been arrogance and coldness, there was now a feeling of justice and new hope. Richard stood frozen, unsure what to do. His power had slipped from his hands in front of everyone. Angela looked at him one last time. Her expression was not cruel, only firm. "You had a choice yesterday, Richard. You could have chosen kindness. You chose arrogance. That is a lesson you will remember." She turned to the staff with a soft smile. "Thank you for listening. I'll meet with all of you soon." With that, she picked up her folder and walked toward the exit, her steps steady and strong. The customers watched her leave with admiration. The staff whispered among themselves, already sensing that their workplace was about to be different. Richard stood there, silent and shaken, knowing his position would never be the same again. Angela stepped outside into the sunlight. She breathed in deeply, feeling both the weight and the freedom of truth. She had revealed herself not out of pride, but to remind everyone of a simple lesson: Dignity and respect should never be optional. The following morning, the dealership buzzed with whispers. News traveled faster than anyone expected. Staff members had gone home the night before and shared the unbelievable story with their families, and some had even told friends. By the time the doors opened again, half the city seemed to know that the dealership had a new owner and that she was the very woman the manager had thrown out just days earlier. Angela arrived quietly, as she always did. She stepped out of a modest car and walked toward the building with the same calm steps, but this time, the staff looked at her with completely different eyes. Some nodded respectfully, some smiled nervously, and others simply stood a little straighter, unsure of how to behave. The young salesman who had greeted her kindly before gave her a warm smile and whispered, "Good morning, ma'am." She returned the smile, appreciating his sincerity. Inside the dealership, Richard was restless. He had barely slept. All night, he replayed the scene in his mind: how he had dismissed her, how she had revealed her ownership papers, and how customers had applauded her while he stood in shock. His pride, once so strong, now felt crushed. But a part of him still couldn't accept it. He told himself that maybe she wasn't serious, maybe she would change her mind, maybe he would still keep his position if he apologized enough. When Angela entered, Richard straightened his suit jacket and approached her quickly, trying to act respectful. "Good morning, Miss Angela," he said, forcing a smile. I wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding. I didn't know who you were. If I had known, of course, I would have treated you differently." Angela paused, looking at him carefully. Her voice was calm but clear. "That is exactly the problem, Richard. Respect should not depend on who a person is. It should be given to everyone equally." Her words struck him, but he forced another smile, nodding repeatedly. Yes, you're absolutely right. I realize that now." He glanced nervously at the other staff who were watching. "I hope we can move forward from this." Angela gave a polite nod. "We will move forward, but things will not stay the same." She walked past him toward the center of the showroom, where she asked the staff to gather. The employees formed a circle around her, curious and anxious about what would happen next. Customers who were browsing also stopped to listen, sensing something important. Angela placed her folder on a table and spoke clearly. "As you all know, this dealership now belongs to me. But ownership is not just about papers. It is about responsibility. I believe a business should be more than just sales and profits. It should be about respect, fairness, and trust. Every person who walks through those doors deserves to feel welcomed." The staff listened closely. Some nodded in agreement, while others lowered their heads, remembering how they had ignored her during her first visit. Angela continued, "Yesterday, I revealed myself because I wanted to be honest with you. I could have stayed silent, but I wanted to show that how we treat people when we think they are ordinary says more about our character than how we treat people we believe are important." Her eyes moved across the faces of the staff, finally resting on Richard. His face burned, and he shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't look away. Angela took a deep breath and smiled softly. "I built my career by facing situations where people doubted me, judged me, or tried to push me aside. But I never let their opinions define me. I let my work, my patience, and my dignity speak for me. That is why I am standing here today, not as someone who was humiliated, but as someone who believes we can build something better together." The room filled with silence, but it was a respectful silence. Her words had touched more than just the employees, even the customers felt inspired. One elderly man browsing cars wiped his eyes and whispered to his wife, "That woman has strength." Angela then laid out her vision. "From now on, we will have new standards here. Every customer will be greeted warmly, no matter how they look, no matter what they wear, no matter what car they drive. We will treat each person with dignity. If a car is too expensive for someone, we will not embarrass them. We will guide them kindly to options that suit them." This dealership will become known not just for its cars, but for its respect. The staff clapped softly, building into loud applause. Even the customers joined in, smiling and nodding. For the first time, the energy in the room felt different. It felt alive, positive, and hopeful. Angela looked around and added, "And let me be clear, arrogance has no place here. I will not allow anyone to look down on others. That means we may need to make changes in leadership." Her eyes once again fell on Richard. His face turned pale, and his hands tightened at his sides. He realized she was speaking about him. Fear rushed through him, but so did anger. He forced another weak smile, trying to save himself. "Miss Angela, please," he said nervously. "I admit I made a mistake, but I've been managing this place for years. I know how things work. You need me here." Angela's voice was firm but gentle. "I need leaders who understand respect, not just numbers. You have skill, Richard, but yesterday showed me that you have not learned the most important skill of all: humility. I will think about your position, but know this, things will change." The staff shifted uncomfortably, but many secretly agreed with her. They had seen Richard's arrogance before, not just with Angela but with them as well. For years, he had carried himself like he was untouchable. Now, for the first time, he looked small. After the meeting, Angela stayed to talk with some of the employees individually. She asked about their experiences, listened to their concerns, and even asked for suggestions on how to improve customer service. The staff were surprised at how approachable she was. They weren't used to an owner who listened so carefully. Some even admitted they felt hopeful about the future. Meanwhile, Richard retreated to his office. He sat at his desk, his mind racing. His pride told him to fight, to resist her changes, but another part of him knew he was standing on shaky ground. He feared losing his position, his title, his power. For the first time, he felt powerless in the very place where he once ruled. Angela finally left the dealership that afternoon, but the effect of her presence stayed behind. The employees talked about her words long after she was gone. Customers told their friends about the new owner who believed in respect. And Richard sat alone in his office, staring at the wall, knowing his world was about to change. As Angela's car drove her away, she looked out of the window at the city passing by. She thought about how small moments can reveal so much about people: the way Richard had dismissed her, the way the young salesman had greeted her, the way customers had clapped when she spoke. She realized that this was not just about a car dealership. It was about life itself. How we treat others in ordinary moments defines us far more than how we act when the spotlight is on us. Angela closed her eyes and leaned back, letting the truth settle in her heart. She knew the journey was far from over. She had revealed herself, and now the real work would begin: changing not only the culture of the dealership but the mindset of those who worked within it. The days that followed were filled with tension inside the dealership. Everyone knew that change was coming, and change always carried both excitement and fear. Some of the staff felt hopeful because they had long wished for a fairer and kinder environment. Others, especially those who had followed Richard's strict and often arrogant leadership, worried about what the future would mean for them. Richard himself was the most uneasy of all. His pride had taken a huge hit after Angela revealed she was the new owner. The memory haunted him: customers clapping for her, staff nodding at her words, and his own red face burning with shame. He tried to convince himself it was just a moment, that things would return to normal, but deep down he knew the truth: he had lost control. Angela returned 3 days later to hold her first official meeting with the staff. She entered the showroom with her usual calm grace, carrying only a small notebook in her hand. The staff gathered quickly, standing in a circle once more. Even the customers who happened to be inside stepped aside to watch, sensing something important was about to happen. Richard stood stiffly among the employees, his suit pressed neatly, his tie pulled tight. He wanted to appear strong, but his nervous glances betrayed his fear. Angela looked around at everyone, offering a warm smile before speaking. "Thank you all for being here. As you know, I am now the owner of this dealership. But ownership, to me, means responsibility, not power. My goal is not to control you but to work with you so that together we can make this dealership the best place in the city, not just for sales, but for respect and trust." Her voice carried a steady confidence that made people lean closer to listen. She then turned her gaze toward Richard, who shifted uncomfortably. "But before we move forward, we must address something important," she continued. "Leadership." The room grew silent. The staff glanced at Richard, then at Angela, waiting for what would come next. Angela took a breath and spoke firmly but kindly. "I came here first as a customer. What I saw was arrogance and disrespect. No customer should ever feel pushed aside or judged. Respect should not depend on what someone wears, what they look like, or how much money they appear to have. It should be given freely. That is the heart of good business." Richard's face turned red again. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but Angela raised her hand gently, silencing him. "Richard, I do not doubt your skill in managing numbers. You know this business well. But skill without humility is dangerous. Yesterday, I gave you the chance to reflect. Today, I must decide." The staff held their breath. Richard's heart pounded in his chest. He knew what was coming. Angela's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "As of today, you are no longer the manager of this dealership." Gasps spread across the room. Some staff looked shocked, while others quietly nodded as if they had expected it. Richard's mouth fell open. You can't do that," he stammered. "I've given years to this place. I've built its reputation. You can't just take it all away." Angela looked at him calmly. "I am not taking away your years of work. That is part of history now. But leadership is about the present and the future. And I cannot allow arrogance to lead this place any longer. It sets the wrong example for everyone here." Richard's hands trembled. His pride, his position, everything he had held onto so tightly, was slipping away in front of everyone. For once, his sharp tongue found no words. He stood frozen, humiliated, his eyes darting between the staff who now looked at him with a mixture of pity and quiet relief. Angela turned her attention back to the staff. "This dealership deserves a leader who listens, who respects, and who builds trust. That is why I am appointing a new manager today." She looked at the young salesman who had first greeted her kindly on her very first visit. His eyes widened in shock as she said his name. "David, you will be the new manager." David gasped. "Me? Ma'am, I'm just a junior salesman. I don't know if I'm ready." Angela smiled warmly. "You may not have years of management experience, but you have what matters most, respect for people. I believe with guidance and support, you can grow into this role. Leadership is not about titles, David. It is about character." The staff erupted into applause. Some even smiled broadly, clearly happy with the choice. Customers watching also clapped, impressed by the fairness of the decision. Richard, however, could not bear it. He shook his head violently, his voice trembling with anger. "This is ridiculous. You're replacing me with a child? You're throwing away years of experience for what, a smile and a kind word? This business will fall apart without me." Angela's eyes were kind, but her tone was final. "The business will not fall apart, Richard. It will rise. Because respect builds stronger foundations than arrogance ever could." Richard's face twisted with frustration, but deep inside he knew there was nothing left for him here. With heavy steps, he turned and walked out of the showroom. His shoes clicked against the polished floor until the sound faded away. The staff watched him leave, some feeling sorry, others feeling relieved. For the first time in years, the air inside the dealership felt lighter. Angela then turned back to the employees and smiled. "From today, we begin a new chapter. We will build a place where every customer feels valued, where every employee feels respected, and where kindness is as important as sales. Together, we will make this dealership not only successful in numbers but honorable in spirit." The applause grew louder, filling the entire showroom. David's eyes shone with both excitement and nervousness as his colleagues patted his back, congratulating him. He knew the responsibility ahead was heavy, but he also knew he was not alone. Angela believed in him, and that belief gave him strength. As the meeting ended, customers approached Angela, shaking her hand, praising her for her decision. One woman said, "It's rare to see a business owner who cares more about respect than money. You've earned my trust today." Another man added, "If this is how you run things, I'll be telling all my friends to buy from here." Angela thanked them all warmly. She knew words were powerful, but actions were stronger. The real test would be in the days and months to come, as her vision for fairness was put into practice. Later that evening, after the staff had gone home, Angela stood alone in the quiet showroom. The cars gleamed under the soft lights, but what she saw was not just vehicles. It was a place of opportunity, a place where people could change, grow, and learn. She thought about Richard. Though his arrogance had cost him, she hoped he would one day learn the lesson hidden in his failure. Everyone deserved the chance to grow, but only if they were willing to humble themselves. Angela closed her notebook and whispered to herself, "Respect first, always." With that, she stepped out into the night, ready for the journey ahead. Weeks passed, and the dealership began to feel like a completely different place. The changes Angela had introduced slowly took root, and every day, the environment grew warmer and more welcoming. Customers noticed it right away. Where once the staff had been focused only on numbers and closing deals quickly, now they listened with patience, guided buyers kindly, and showed respect no matter what car someone could afford. The staff had also changed. Angela made sure they felt valued. She held short meetings every morning to encourage them and remind them that respect was their first priority. She listened to their ideas and often asked for their opinions before making decisions. For the first time, many employees felt like their voices mattered. They no longer came to work just for a paycheck, they came because they felt proud to be part of something bigger. David, the young salesman who had been promoted to manager, worked hard every day to live up to Angela's trust. At first, he doubted himself. He had never imagined he would become a leader. But Angela guided him patiently, teaching him that leadership was not about control, but about setting an example. He treated his team with fairness, encouraged them when they struggled, and praised them when they did well. Slowly, he gained their respect, not through fear like Richard had, but through kindness. Customers began to spread the word around town. They told their friends and families, "Go to that dealership. The cars are good, but the people are even better. They treat you with dignity." Sales numbers rose naturally, not because of pressure, but because of trust. Angela often smiled quietly to herself, knowing that her vision was working. But while the dealership was blooming, Richard's world looked very different. After leaving the showroom that day, he had spent weeks in anger and frustration. He felt humiliated, not just because he had lost his position, but because the truth of his arrogance had been exposed so publicly. He had told himself over and over that Angela had been unfair, but deep inside, he knew the truth: he had brought this upon himself. His pride had blinded him, and now he was alone. One afternoon, as Angela reviewed reports in her office, she heard a knock on the door. When she looked up, she was surprised to see Richard standing there. His shoulders were not as straight as before, and the confidence that once carried him seemed gone. He looked tired, almost fragile. Angela invited him in. "Richard," she said softly, "what brings you here?" He hesitated before speaking. I came to apologize." His voice was low, not sharp or defensive as before. "I was wrong. I let my pride control me, and I treated people unfairly. That day when you walked in, I judged you without even listening. And I paid the price for it. Angela studied him for a long moment. She could see that his arrogance had been replaced by regret. He continued, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I don't expect my job back. But I needed to tell you I'm sorry. Not just to you, but to every customer and staff member I disrespected. For the first time, Richard looked human, not like a manager trying to hold power, but like a man who had learned a painful lesson. Angela's heart softened. She nodded gently. Richard, it takes courage to admit mistakes. I don't hold anger toward you. But I hope you carry this lesson with you always. Respect should never be conditional. It must be given freely. Richard lowered his head. I understand that now. Thank you for listening. He left quietly, his steps heavy, but perhaps lighter in spirit than before. Angela sat in silence after he left, reflecting on what had happened. Life had a way of teaching lessons when people least expected it. Sometimes it was through success, and other times it was through failure. For Richard, it had been through losing everything he thought mattered most. She hoped he would rebuild his life with humility at its core. The dealership, meanwhile, continued to thrive. One evening, a large crowd gathered inside the showroom for a special event. Angela had organized a community night to thank the people of the city for their support. Families walked in, children admired the shiny cars, and music played softly in the background. Angela stood at the front, greeting everyone warmly. When the time came for her to speak, she stood on the small stage they had set up and looked out at the sea of faces. Staff members stood proudly at the sides, and customers, both new and old, filled the room. Thank you all for coming tonight, she began, her voice carrying warmth. When I first walked into this dealership, I was not treated with respect. I was judged by how I looked, not by who I was. That day could have been a painful memory, but instead, it became the start of something new. Because I realized that if this place could change, it could become a symbol of what respect truly means. The crowd listened closely, many nodding. Angela continued, respect is not something we give only to those who seem powerful. Respect belongs to everyone, rich or poor, young or old, ordinary or extraordinary. That is the message I want this dealership to carry. Not just cars, but dignity. Not just sales, but trust. The audience erupted into applause, their hands echoing against the walls. David stood at the side, his chest swelling with pride, knowing he was part of something meaningful. The staff clapped the loudest, their smiles wide, their spirits lifted. Angela smiled, her eyes shining. This place is not mine alone. It is ours. Every staff member who works here, every customer who walks through the doors, every person who believes in respect. Together, we are building something stronger than any car model or sales record. We are building a culture of kindness. The applause grew louder, filling the room with energy and joy. Some even cheered her name. Angela felt her heart swell. This was more than business. This was purpose. As the night ended and the people left with smiles on their faces, Angela stood quietly in the showroom. The lights reflected off the polished cars, but she was not looking at them. She was thinking about the journey. From the moment she walked in as a simple customer, to the humiliation she faced, to the moment she revealed herself as the owner, every step had carried a lesson. She thought about Richard, about how his fall had been painful but necessary. She thought about David, who had grown from a humble salesman into a respected leader. She thought about the staff, who had learned that true success was not measured by money but by how people were treated. And finally, she thought about herself, about how patience and dignity had carried her through. Angela whispered softly, almost to herself, respect first, always. She smiled and turned off the lights, leaving the showroom in a calm glow. The dealership stood tall in the city, not just as a place to buy cars, but as a symbol of fairness, kindness, and quiet strength. And Angela's story became one that people told again and again, a reminder that respect can transform even the coldest hearts and that dignity always has the power to win.